At least since 2021, David Reich published that the highest genetic similarity in the world occurs between Native Americans and Europeans, and obviously this is a very unexpected finding. This so since according to consensus and out of Africa, the Native Americans are supposed to descend from Asians and/or from Africans. Side note: according to consensus, the first Amerindian Natives, or the Native Americans, are supposed to have come from Asia through the Beringia Land Bridge between 30,000 to 12,000 years ago. Supposing the out-of-Africans to have crossed the Beringia Land Bridge between 30,000 to 12,000 years ago is kind of absurd. It would have been like committing collective suicide, especially so since according consensus they had been trapped for thousands of years. The assumption of them have been trapped on the Beringia Land Bridge is essential for consensus, as well as out of Africa, because without the trapping for thousands of years the also by consensus assumed evolution from Eurasians into Native Americans could not have taken place, and it is known that at the time there were no candidate ancestors of the earliest Native Americans on the Eurasian side. The Wikipedia map on your screen tells you that there was no vegetation and no water, and consequently no animals, so they would not have had any chance to even survive only a quick passing on foot, let alone being trapped for many thousands of years. The argument of migrating animals is also quite absurd because amongst others no evidence is found, while there should be thousands of years of evidence of animals, let alone of hunting animals. Migration there was improbable, and even if there had been some migration it would have been quick passages in herds, and the stuck and deprived out of Africans would be stranded without animals for months and possibly for years. Inuit surviving is not comparable. Any argument of Inuit surviving is not comparable, since Inuit stay near their fishing grounds or seas, and carry the fat-digesting gene that none of the Eurasians, nor Africans, carried. Inuits avoid very extensive permafrost regions due to the challenges. Obviously being sandwiched between two of the most extensive permafrost regions of the world, also presenting continuous permafrost, as would have been present, clearly would have been the absolute worst-case scenario. The largest permafrost areas are found in the Arctic regions of Siberia, Canada, Greenland, and Alaska. Permafrost, ground that remains frozen for at least 2 consecutive years, underlies approximately 25% of the Northern Hemisphere's landmass. Within this area, Eurasia, primarily Siberia, holds about 65%, and the remaining 35% is in North America and Greenland. Siberia, a significant portion of Siberia is covered by continuous permafrost. Alaska, approximately 85% of Alaska is covered with permafrost. Inuit stay near fishing grounds or seas. While the Inuit have adapted to live in cold, Arctic environments, they generally avoid very extensive permafrost regions due to the challenges it poses for their way of life. Inuits generally stay near their fishing grounds or the seas, because their culture and survival are deeply intertwined with marine resources. They are a marine people, heavily reliant on the ocean for food, transportation. The sea provides them a variety of food, including fish, marine mammals, seals, walruses, whales, and seabirds, which are crucial for Inuit sustenance. The sea ice and also open ocean serve as highways for Inuit, facilitating travel between communities and hunting grounds. This sounds as a contradiction and new paradigm for the already improbable hypothesized Beringia standstill. Please note that they need sea ice and not land ice or permafrost. Historically, Inuit communities have settled along coastlines to take advantage of marine resources. Their knowledge of ice conditions and marine life is essential for their survival and is passed down through generations. Permafrost suits long-distance navigation. Inuits don't necessarily avoid permafrost regions in the sense of completely staying away. They are acutely aware of the dangers of permafrost thaw and adapt their travel and hunting practices accordingly. Permafrost thaw weakens the ground, making it unstable for travel, especially during warmer months. Inuit hunters rely on their knowledge of the land, including the ice and snow conditions, for safe travel. Surviving, offspring and especially evolution improbable. Apart from no chance to survive, there would especially have been no chance to raise children, and no children equals no evolution, but extinction instead. Inuits, as all other Native Americans, uniquely carry the fat-digesting gene, and no candidate ancestor on the Eurasian side carried this fat-digesting gene. Lacking this fat-digesting gene makes survival and raising children even more improbable. Cultural and morphological similarities between American and Asian populations. Consensus based these conclusions on cultural, morphological, and genetic similarities between American and Asian populations. Now we know from genetics, as well as from ancient DNA, that the needed ancestry similarities are no longer sufficient to explain the peopling population of the Americas departing from Eurasia. By means of well-executed 3 population tests, we now also know that the similarity between Native Americans and a large part of Europeans is much higher than that between American and Asian populations, which totally undermines any argument of sufficient genetic similarities in the case of the Bering Strait crossing. Bering Strait crossing is no longer supported by evidence. The earlier supposed genetic evidence pointing to an Asian origin via the Bering Strait or the Beringia Land Bridge is not supported anymore. In fact, most if not all essential genetic evidence, and especially markers, are proof against out of Africa, and points to out of the Americas instead. That most probably is amongst the reasons why consensus does not follow the latest and correct science, and avoids the now discovered, recognized, and considered essential ancestral markers. Scientists do not or rarely touch this subject anymore, however it has more or less been hardwired into a standard dogma, and recently already into most artificial intelligence positions takes. Y-DNA are found in Asia cannot be the ancestors of the majority of the Native Americans. Today this consensus supposition is debunked by ancient DNA research. In other words, this consensus supposition is debunked by genetics, since the Y-DNA are found in Asia cannot be the ancestors of the majority of the Native Americans. It also seems to have been an artifact, as well as to have gone extinct too early, roughly already around 24,000 years ago. Q is older than R, and the Y-DNA Q found in Asia cannot be the ancestors of those Native Americans that provingly first took hold in South America. We look into this Beringia Land Bridge standstill genetical drift hypothesis, and its paradigms, more in depth in other videos. Bering Strait impossible because of 3 population tests. What we can say is relevant here is that if the Beringia Land Bridge standstill hypothesis was in fact true, then the highest similarity proven by the 3 population tests would not be possible. In other words, the highest similarity proves that the Beringia Land Bridge standstill hypothesis, which also is a drift hypothesis, which clearly is essential for consensus, which also includes out of Africa, is not possible and as such cannot be true. The general lack of interest in looking into paradigms, as well as in following the latest and correct science, is quite worrisome, and we claim there is a clear risk of it already affecting human quality of life as well as economies, and also putting human existence at risk. One does not need rocket science to see that we 8 billion humans got into a complex perfect storm with many composed and each other reinforcing aspects. This includes health experts that claim climate challenges to have caused health crises, and threaten to cause at least 1 up to 20 times more severe health crisis. Rewrite human history from scratch. In a very diplomatic way, and also with an exceptionally soft voice, David Reich is one of the few of those who should have an impact, to stimulate others to rewrite human history from scratch, this time based on the important and massive amount of new scientific tools and findings at our disposal. But he stops short of saying what exactly holding on to the improbable standard dogma could affect or threaten. He also stops short of saying or claiming the many benefits of following the science and evidence, also in order to recognize our ancestors, including in order to recognize their unique sustainable practices, which made them thrive so much. They eventually would people populate and pass their knowledge to the whole world. Lost knowledge, that is easy to recover. It worked exceptionally well in the past. There is no reason to expect it to fail in the near future, especially with all the new technology we dispose of today at our disposal. Exactly this knowledge, as well as the recognition of the effectiveness of sustainability, would eventually be lost.